Everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellen Cochran. I am the President and CEO of Quality Care for Children. Today's Georgia Parent Power webinar topic, Accessing Early Intervention and Special Needs Services, is brought to you today by our leading corporate sponsor, Carter's. For over 10 years, their support has helped us provide information and resources to families. I want to thank you for joining us today. If you are a parent or a family member who is on here seeking a quality-rated childcare and after school, please call our 877-ALL-GA-KIDS referral line to talk to a specialist to receive free referrals for care in your community. That's 1-877-ALL-GA-KIDS or 877-255-4254. You may also search online at www.qualityrated.org. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing here at Quality Care for Children, please click on the notification bell so you never miss a Georgia Parent Power session moving forward with Quality Care for Children. I am so excited to be your moderator today. As you know, the mission of Quality Care for Children is to create a system that equips families and childcare providers with the knowledge and resources to nurture and educate Georgia's infants and young children. In my first 5 months at QCC, I've had the chance to see the breadth of ways that our incredible team here responds to early childcare providers, along with parents and caregivers, to ensure that young children are in supportive, language-rich environments needed to thrive. Knowing what is available to support you as a caregiver to your young children is a critical piece to our work. When I became a parent 15 years ago, I remember the doctor telling me that my own son should be evaluated for intervention services. I remember the fear I had about what those services meant for me and for my son and my husband. And I remember the stress of trying to figure out those steps, both as a parent and as a working parent and as a new parent. The therapist that worked with us during his first 5 years equipped me with the tools that I needed to support my son on his journey and advocate for him as he continued on into primary school. As I talked to others in early education over the years here in Georgia and around the country, I've learned how fortunate I was to be referred so early to those supports that we needed as a family. And like many of you on the call today, I want to make sure, as all of us do at QCC, that you know what is available to you and that you can access those supports. That brings me to today's topic, accessing early intervention special needs services. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, about 1 in 6 U.S. children have developmental disabilities. The National Center for Education Statistics reported that the number of children ages 3 to 5 in Georgia with disabilities is steadily rising to almost 5%. Having access to high quality early childhood experiences and education is pivotal to all children. When special needs for children go undiagnosed or unaddressed, it can lead to increased financial hardships and mental strain for parents. Today, we will discuss how to access early intervention for special needs services and why it's important to get children screened and diagnosed as early as possible. At this time, I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists today. Kevin Byrd is the program manager for Babies Can't Wait program for the Maternal and Child Health section of Georgia Department of Public Health. Kevin has over 20 years of experience in working with children and families with an expertise in family and child development and early intervention services. Kevin holds a master's degree in education management and leadership from Strayer University and a bachelor's degree in family and child development from Winthrop University. Thank you for being here this afternoon, Kevin. Wanda Granger-Cleckley is the special education coordinator at Atlanta Public Schools. She is highly recognized for promoting inclusive opportunities for preschool-aged children with disabilities and sustaining positive outcomes. She is passionate about helping families locate resources to identify and evaluate young children with suspected disabilities or developmental delays. Wanda holds a Master of Education in Special Education and an Education Specialist degree in Educational Leadership. We're glad you could join us today, Wanda. Veronica Thompson is the Program Manager for the Inclusion and Behavioral Support Program at the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. She has over 15 years of experience working in the early childhood field, teaching, training, coaching, and working as an administrator. Veronica holds a bachelor's degree in Family Community Services from Michigan State University and a master's degree in child development with a specialization in early childhood administration from the Erickson Institute in Chicago. Welcome. Glad to have you here as well, Veronica. I want to thank you each for joining and sharing your insights with us today and with so many of our parents and providers on the call. We're going to divide our conversation into 3 sections this afternoon. First, we'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves, to talk about the programs they work in, and give insights as to what they do, why it's important, and how families can access those services. Afterwards, we'll ask them questions that we've received from parents and from those of you that registered for today's session. And lastly, we'll pick questions from our Q&A section of the webinar. So please remember, as your questions come up, to put them in the Q&A, not in the chat. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see Q&A and chat. So let's go ahead and begin. Kevin, let's start with you, since we're starting with our youngest infants. Can you talk a little bit to us about the Babies Can't Wait program and a little about your work?
Yes, gladly. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Quality Care for Children, for inviting me this morning to speak on the panel. As mentioned earlier, my name is Kevin Byrd. I am the program manager for Babies Can't Wait, which is the Georgia's early intervention program for early intervention services. Next slide, please. So Babies Can't Wait, who are we? Babies Can't Wait, again, is early intervention program for Georgia. We specifically support families that have children between the ages of birth until 3 years old who have a suspected developmental delay or a diagnosed medical condition that may result in a possible developmental delay. The Babies Can't Wait program is a part of the Federal Office of Special Education program. We are supported under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, better known as IDEA. IDEA guarantees that all children between the ages of birth to 36 months, regardless of their disability, regardless of their family background or income, that those families have access to the services that they need that will enhance their development. Here in Georgia, Babies Can't Wait is considered the Part C program. And again, we are focusing on families who have a concern regarding their children's development, either in utero, immediately after birth, or later in the early years. Currently with Babies Can't Wait, we are serving nearly 30,000 children across the state of Georgia. We have 3 different regions. We have a metro region, we have a South Georgia region, and a North Georgia region. And throughout those areas, we provide various supports to families depending on what their needs and the family concerns are. I will talk a little bit more in detail about the services that we offer. But first, I want to talk about the benefits, because as we all know, the earlier something is suspected or the earlier there's a concern, the better to try to reach out and get those services. And that's what Babies Can't Wait is here for. We are here to support families to help their children develop to their fullest potential. We want to help them minimize the fear that their child may or may not need special education or support services in the future. We ultimately want to make sure that families are comfortable and confident in being the ambassadors for their children. We want families to feel confident and comfortable when there's a concern, that they share that concern with their child care teacher, with their pediatrician, and know what supports and how to reach out to those supports. Next slide, please. So there's three main purposes for Babies Can't Wait. It's to provide, improve, and support. We want to provide early identification and screening for children for any and every family that has a concern regarding their child's development. We want to improve if there is a concern or a diagnosed or identified developmental delay. We want to partner and collaborate with the family and all those who are connected to the family to make sure that their child has all the support and resources that they need to make sure that they have the ability to interact and engage as any and every other child in their age group. And finally, support. We're not all just about therapeutical services. We're about community resources. We're about acting as a resource and a tool to families, providing them information and guidance on the best way to support their child in their learning or in their developmental delays. I always like to talk stats. I'm not a big numbers person, but I think numbers help sometimes. We have what we call a fiscal year, and that year, the previous fiscal year ran from July of 2021 to June of 2022, and we supported and provided services for over 26,000 children across the state of Georgia. And currently today, we are serving a little over 17,000 children and those children have active family plans, which we call individualized family service plans. Next slide, please. So I'm saying across the state of Georgia, many of you may be thinking, well, does that include me? I stay in rural Georgia, or I stay in the mountainous area of Georgia. Yes, that includes everyone. Babies Can't Wait has 18 local offices across the state of Georgia. On the screen, you will see a map that lets you know where each local office is located. Within each of those local offices, we have what we call an early intervention coordinator. That is the person who manages that local Babies Can't Wait office. That is the point of contact for all families in that demographic area to discuss services, to discuss the process, and to discuss eligibility. Next slide, please. So the process, what is the Babies Can't Wait process? Well, first and foremost, anyone can make a referral to Babies Can't Wait. I'll say it again, anyone. You as a parent, a family friend, aunt next door, child care center, pediatrician, anyone can make a referral to Babies Can't Wait, but ultimately the decision is the parents. So when the referral is made, the family is contacted regarding the referral reason. There's a discussion that takes place because even though there was a referral made, especially if it was not a parent, we want to know what the parent's concern is. We understand what the teacher or the pediatrician may be concerned about, but we want to know what is the parent's concern. So we talk about that and we call that our intake meeting. After that discussion, if the family gives their approval to go through with the process, we will schedule the initial meeting that will take place in the family's home with a service coordinator. That service coordinator will be the family's best friend. We like to call them the non-blood family member. That service coordinator will support the family throughout the entire process and throughout the child and family's entire stay and enrollment with the program. After that initial meeting with the service coordinator, we will schedule an evaluation and assessment. That evaluation assessment will take place with a multidisciplinary team that will consist of the service coordinator as well as 2 other disciplines. I want to also mention to everyone listening that we have a program called Children's First. Children's First is a child health program. The program also serves the state of Georgia, and Children's First is a point of entry for all Georgia child health programs. So you can never go wrong by contacting Children's First. Even if you don't know what service or program best meets the needs of your child or your family, the coordinator at Children's First is there to direct you in the right direction. Eligibility. how is my child eligible? So there's two ways. If your child has a diagnosed medical condition, they're automatically eligible for our program. An evaluation is taking place only to find out where your child is currently in their development. That is not an evaluation for eligibility. However, if you just have a concern with your child not speaking or walking or can't hold their bottle, we consider those possible developmental delays. And so that's when the evaluation of eligibility takes place. And we look at 5 areas of domain. And that is your gross motor, your language skills, your social skills, your self-help skills, and your cognitive skills. Throughout this eligibility process, there is no cost associated or accrued from the family. So it costs a family nothing to find out if their child is eligible or just want to know where my child is currently in their development. There's no cost at all from the parents. Next slide, please. So we talked about the evaluation and the multidisciplinary team. It is the goal of Babies Can't Wait to always have one member of that multidisciplinary team represent the family's concern. So there's the service coordinator, then there's 2 additional people. If the family has a speech concern, it is our top priority to make sure that a speech therapist is a part of that team. So the family is able to receive direct information from a skilled discipline provider to address their concerns. If the child is eligible, an individualized family service plan will be developed. An IFSP team is identified. That IFSP team includes the service coordinator, any providers that will be recommended to provide services to the family. The parents is the most important person in that team, and then any other person that the parent deems eligible or knowledgeable of their child's development. That IFSP plan, once created, is required and mandatory to be reviewed every 6 months. However, a member of the IFSP team can call and schedule a review or a meeting to make any adjustments that the plan needs at that time. If a child is not eligible, it is not the end of the road. We do not leave you along and say, hey, well, you're not eligible. I hope it works out for you. We will not leave without addressing your concern. We will provide you resources and tools to help you support your child and your concerns for your child's development. And it's also, we also let you know that 3 months, if you still have that concern, you can have another evaluation and go through the process again. We are continually available to support families up until their child turns the age of 3. On the screen, you'll see, again, the 5 developmental domains that we evaluate during the evaluation, and then you will see a list of the most common evaluation tools that we use during evaluation. Next slide, please. On the screen before you now is a list of all the services that Babies Can't Wait provide. I will not read them to you, but as you may or may not assume, that the most popular services are our therapeutical services. So it's your occupational therapy, it's your physical therapy, it's your speech language pathology or speech therapy, it's your behavioral intervention, service coordination, always a support, as well as audiological services are some of our most common services that are provided through our agency. Next slide, please. So you're saying, Kevin, we went through the evaluation, we're eligible, we have our individualized family service plan. My child now is about to turn 3. What next? Well, what next is what we like to call transition and exit. So because we know that we only serve children till the age of 3, at 27 months of age, your service coordinator will begin talking about what's next. Your child has made all this great progress through Babies Can't Wait, but we don't want it to stop at age 3. We want it to continue. So what's next? When Babies Can't Wait leaves your home, What is next for your child? What is next for your family? On your screen, you'll see options. There's private childcare, there's public preschool, there is Head Start, there's might just be staying home with grandma. Regardless of what happens when Babies Can't Wait leaves, that's a transition. So we want to make sure that the family is prepared to continue to support the child's success and growth in their development. So we will develop a plan of action. A plan of action could be what we call Part B, which is through Atlantic Public Schools and Department of Education. You're going to hear from Wanda about the amazing services that they have in the school system. It could be private therapy. You might want to continue with the therapist that you currently have because you have a relationship. Or it could be my child is now ready, or I'm now ready for my child to go to childcare. How can we structure or develop a plan for my child to continue receiving services in the childcare center? We write that plan up. We want to map it out, know exactly what's going to happen, know exactly what to expect. So when we leave, again, you're that ambassador. You know your child better than anyone, aside from the degrees and the therapeutical licenses. There is no better person who knows your child than you. So you are the best teacher, you are the best therapist, and Babies Can't Wait is here just to support and help coach and cheer you on to make sure that when you leave Babies Can't Wait, you have all the tools and resources you need for your child to continue and excel in life. Next slide, please. And that's Babies Can't Wait. On the screen, you will see contact information, not only from myself, but from the Early Intervention Deputy Director. I welcome all questions via email, via phone. There's an additional information on our website. And I know that QCC is going to share some resources and brochures through Babies Can't Wait that will help support you all in your early intervention journey. So I hope this information was helpful to each and everyone listening. And again, I thank you.
Kevin, I'm going to speak on behalf of those in the audience to say that this was incredibly helpful. And I heard some really great takeaways from that. Sort of the anyone can make referrals. This is a free service and you are supported with that service coordinator. You know, it doesn't stop, as you said, when kids turn 3. And it's a great transition to our next speaker, Wanda, who can talk from the public school perspective and from that partnership of what does happen in that transition, Wanda, and how does that work for families as they transition from what might be either from Babies Can't Wait or are new and at that age where they're looking for something.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Again, thank you, Quality Care, for having me today. I'm so delighted and so grateful to be a part of this webinar today. And again, I am Wanda Cleckley. I am a special education coordinator with Atlanta Public Schools. I've been in education, special education for the past 26 years, and I just love it. And my ultimate goal today is to share some information, give parents insight on how to make that smooth transition from, like Kevin said, from Babies Can't Wait to your local education agency, regardless of what side of town you live on or what county you're from. I'm hopeful that this presentation will support you in your transition. And thank you, Kevin, for such a great transition from Babies Can't Wait to Atlanta Public Schools. Again, I would like to go ahead and share some information about the child find process for preschool age children. And just as Kevin stated earlier, early identification and intervention for young children with disabilities is critical important for their future academic success. And also Kevin noted in his previous presentation about IDEA, which is the Individual with Disability Education Improvement Act. And IDEA holds us responsible as the local education agencies to serve children with disabilities beginning at the ages of birth to 21. And as a local education agency, which is your local school district, IDEA also requires us to locate, identify, and evaluate young children with suspected disabilities and or development delays. And those delays can look like self-help care skills, adaptive, cognition, communication, physical development, and social emotional development. And also in the state of Georgia, children suspected of having a disability, including those children ages 3 to 5, we are required to conduct a comprehensive evaluation to determine if the child will qualify for special education and or related services. That's ultimately the LEA responsibility in the state of Georgia. Next slide, please. So who can make a referral? And it's like Kevin stated earlier, Babies Can't Wait can make a referral. And what the good thing about Babies Can't Wait, the child is already part of an organization that can support the families in transitioning. And one thing Babies Can't Wait, they will coordinate with the local education agency, which is the LEA, do a conference, a transition conference. Should take place at least 27 months of age, like Karen stated earlier. A parent, however, must consent to allow Babies Can't Wait to contact the local education agency. And for those children who are going to be referred from Babies Can't Wait, those are the children with disabilities who are approaching the age of 3. They're transitioning from Babies Can't Wait, and they have an IFSP and or identified as being potentially eligible for preschool education services. Also, as stated earlier, parents or anybody can make a referral for a child that may be suspected of having a disability. It can be a parent, it can be an early childhood care provider. The parent, at the end of the day, must consent to the referral process to support the child care providers or any other individual or regular early childhood care providers. Again, anyone can make a referral to the local education agency, parents or early regular childhood care provider, in addition to any other individuals. Next slide, please. So what does the referral process look like? So just like, for instance, if a child is referred to the local education agency and determined that a comprehensive evaluation is warranted, it's the LEA responsibility to obtain parental consent to proceed on evaluating the child process for evaluation. The LEA must conduct a comprehensive evaluation within 60 days of receiving a written consent from the parent. So the team will formally and informally assess the child in all areas that could be hearing and vision, social emotional, cognition, adaptive, communication, and motor. And once the team informally assess the child, they will also gather information that may be interventions that were, like from Babies Can't Wait, that could be considered intervention, or interventions that an early childhood care provider may be providing the child. Just to be kind of careful and making sure this child is a child that may need some referral. So they may implement intervention, collect progress monitoring. And then once the information collected, that is also considered a part of the evaluation process. And then you have the parent, the regular early childhood care provider, as appropriate, the special education childhood provider, and the LEA representative, which would be someone like myself, is the local education agency, participate in what you call the eligibility determination meeting. And once the child is determined eligible, then an IEP is developed, which is the individualized education program. It's a plan that's specifically designed for that child once he or she qualifies for special education services. And once the LEA implements the IEP, develop the IEP is implemented as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So what does the special education and support for young children look like? Our ultimate goal is to keep children in the least restrictive environment. And the least restrictive environment, which is known as the LRE, means that that child with the disability, the ultimate goal is to educate that child alongside his typical developing peer in a regular early childhood setting as appropriate. Again, the ultimate goal is to keep the child in the least restrictive environment, which means the maximum extent appropriate in a regular early childhood program for children who do not have a disability. That's our ultimate goal, to keep the child in the LRE. And young children in the state of Georgia may receive special education services in a variety of settings. The continuum of special services must be made available. But the IEP team is ultimately responsible making that decision on what the services support would look like and what setting these services should take place to ensure that the child needs are being addressed appropriately. Next slide, please. So what type of service delivery models we have? Again, we have the regular early childhood delivery model, which means that setting is a setting where over 50% of the children are children without a disability. And then you have the special education early childhood setting. And that setting is over 50% of the children are children with the disability that has the IEP. And then you have children that can receive services in the home. And those services look more like a community service model, maybe 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week. And then you have the services that are provided in a provider location, such as a speech and language office, occupational therapist facility, physical, audiological, or other related services. And then you have those services where children may receive services in a separate school, such as a special education school for children with disabilities. And then you have the residential setting. The residential setting is the state school, and most familiar one in the state of Georgia is the Georgia School for the Deaf. And that would be considered a residential setting, and the children are provided opportunity to receiving their services in that setting. Now, I want to go back and talk a little bit about children receiving services in a regular early childhood setting. Those services, like I say, can happen in Georgia Pre-K, it can happen in Head Start, or regular early childhood care facility, a private preschool, a church, at home. The definition, long as the definition of a private elementary school, the service can be provided in a setting that meets the definition or may not meet the definition of a private elementary school. But regardless, once the child qualifies, it's the ultimate goal of the LEA to provide those services. As the IEP team will determine what those services will be provided and what those service delivery models will look like. Next slide, please. So once the child receives the supports and determine what type of supports and services are determined for the child to be appropriate, the service delivery models for children typically provided on a full-time or part-time basis. At full-time, we have programs that are all day, pretty much like a typical school day. 6.5 hours can be in a daycare, a preschool, or either daycare. And we, with the Atlanta Public Schools, we do partner with Head Start, and we partner with Head Start to try to, like I said, the most ultimate goal to keep the children in the least restrictive environment with the LRE. So that could be a typical 6.5 hours, pretty much a school day. And we also have programs that are housed in Atlanta Public Schools buildings. Now, the models may look different in the county that you may reside, but overall, the ultimate goal is to make sure they're educated in the least restrictive environment. And again, the models may look a little different. And part-time services are those services for a typical amount of a half-day preschool or daycare, which could be a half-day program, 4 hours. There are some situations or circumstances where children may come to the preschool self-contained class half of the day, go back to the regular early childhood on the part of the next day, at the end of the day. So we work very closely together to make sure that the children are educated in the least restrictive environment and in their natural environment alongside the typical peers who do not have a disability. But however, it must be appropriate for that particular child. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of special education preschool services in the preschool program? And again, I cannot emphasize the importance that children improve their academic success. They will learn through projects. They will have opportunities to learn through centers, playful activities. The ultimate goal is to make sure that we help children be successful in school and to help them be ready for kindergarten. That's the ultimate goal, to get ready for kindergarten when they're actually participated in the special needs preschool program in the areas of cognition, communication, emotional, motor, and adaptive skills. And they are also provided a development appropriate curriculum with the help and support to children in those areas. And just as Kevin mentioned earlier, all our services are free. It's called a free appropriate public education. Everything is free. Nothing is charged for families. And I ask that families please and daycare providers take opportunity and utilize the services in your child district if they are a child with suspected disability. Again, thank you so much.
Wanda, thank you for that great information for parents. Again, that note that anyone can be referred for services through a variety of different ways, and that includes our early learning providers. Some of those are on the call today. I know some of them are watching, and so I want to give Veronica a chance to talk about the work that the Department of Early Care and Learning is doing with our providers throughout the state. So Veronica, turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Ellen. And I want to thank you also for allowing me to be here today. I'm really excited to share more about our Inclusion and Behavior Support Program and what supports and services that we provide to families and child care providers. So I'll go ahead and get started. We can go to the next slide, please. So the Inclusion and Behavior Support Program, I'll start off by telling you guys just a little bit about us. We're a statewide team of 20 specialists who have had years of experience in education, specializing in best practices in early childhood education, early intervention, and special education. So our specialists primarily work with child care program staff at all levels. They provide training and coaching to support social, emotional, and development, but also to maximize inclusion for all young learners. So throughout these slides, I'll discuss a little bit more in specifics about just our available supports. And if you have questions or if you want to learn more, you guys can contact us at the number on our slide, which is our SEEDS helpline. The SEEDS helpline is the single point of entry contact for the Inclusion and Behavior Support Program at DeKalb. But this information will also be displayed on the last slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of you who aren't familiar with DeKalb or with the Inclusion and Behavior Support Program might be wondering, what do we do? And so this is just an overview of what we provide. We are able to assist with free professional development trainings, with coaching in early childhood classrooms, and assistance with addressing challenging behaviors within the early childhood classroom. So this is all specific to inclusion and social emotional development. We do provide families with inclusive childcare referrals. So if you're looking for a childcare program for your child, you can call the SEEDS helpline at any time, and we're happy to link you with childcare programs that we have worked with, or with other agencies that you might be looking to get in touch with, like Help Me Grow or other community-based organizations. Currently, right now, we're providing all of our supports in person and virtually. That's based off of the preference of the program. But I'll touch down over those 3 types of services that we provide to programs over the next few slides. Next slide. All right, so one type of support, as I said, that our unit provides is coaching. And that's just another option for continuous professional development on top of the many free trainings that we provide to programs. During coaching, our inclusion and behavior support specialists partner with early childhood teachers, with family child care providers or administrators, and they really work through a process where they're identifying goals to improve classroom practices specific to inclusion or to social emotional learning. So our coaching really focuses on those classroom practices like developing relationships, making adaptations, modifications to support children with disabilities, or how to promote engagement and minimizing challenging behavior. A big part of, working with young children, is building their social skills and building, a lot of their developmental skills so that they can be successful. So specialists typically meet with providers on a biweekly basis, and they work really collaboratively just to ensure that those best practices that we really want to see in early childhood classrooms are being used in supporting each and every child, regardless of their abilities. Typically, our specialists work with programs for about 3 months, visiting them every other week. But that's not limited to, we don't cut anyone off at 3 months. If that could be shorter, that could be longer, just based off of what that individual provider needs. Families can also reach out to the helpline and request that someone from our program reach out to their child's child care provider to offer support, coaching, or training. Of course, all of our services are free, but they're also 100% voluntary and designed to really support those child care providers with professional development that will build them up as educators, but also will support the young children that are in their classrooms. Okay, next slide. So we also, in addition to our coaching supports, we provide facilitation of the behavior support planning process. So if there is a child, or if you have a child, if you're a family member who's exhibiting really persistent, challenging behavior within the classroom or within the family learning home, specialists can also assist by facilitating the behavior support process by working alongside teachers, administration, and families to build a plan for that child. So behavior support planning, it's a team-based process that uses data collection and feedback from the family, from the teachers, those who know the child best, to just identify goals and strategies to help that child be successful within their classroom and other settings. This is also another free service. This level of support is also being provided virtually and in person. And so, and we really try to work flexibly with the program and with the families, knowing all the needs and the demands that are on families to be at work, and also for child care providers who are working within the program to figure out what's the best modality to be able to meet together and discuss how we can help this child be successful. All right, next slide. So for families, we have a variety of services that we have available. If you contact our SEEDS helpline, we have supervisors who work to assist families with locating inclusive childcare that's near your home, or if you're looking to look near your place of employment, or a family member, as I said, could contact us to contact their child provider, their child care provider, and offer training and coaching. We're happy to do that. If any families have questions about how to access early intervention services or preschool education in their county, we help them by talking through, what does that referrals process look like, and how they can identify the appropriate resource agencies. And so we also provide referrals to other community agencies like Parent to Parent of Georgia, resources like agencies like Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Georgia Pines. And so we try to make sure that we can get families to the most direct point of contact within whatever agency that they're looking to get in touch with. In addition to just providing referrals, we also have a lot of resources around social emotional tip sheets for families to use at home with their children. And also more information on developmental monitoring, which I'm going to get into on the next slide. All right, so I know this is a common question that we get when families reach out to the helpline or when providers have reached out to us in the past. What do you do when you have a concern about a child's development, if they are missing a milestone? And so what do you do? So the first recommendation, I think, as Kevin said, is you definitely want to be sure that you're the family is speaking with their child's medical provider, their pediatrician. It's really important for conversations about development that they're a regular part of every child's well visit, but also regular discussions between the child care providers and the families. The children are in early learning homes, are in early learning centers for a large amount of times a day. You guys are seeing them work on those developmental skills and building up those milestones. And so that should be a part of your regular conversations with the families, is that, oh, wow, I really saw that, Elliot was getting really great at picking up his cup. However, if there are concerns, those can and should be brought up, and discussed within the child's doctor's appointments. The CDC has developed really great handouts for families that give specific information and different tips on how you can talk with the doctor when you do have concerns about development. And so I shared one of the handouts with you all. It should be linked in for you guys to access, but you can also access it by scanning this QR code on your screen. It's a really great resource also for childcare providers to share with families in case they are having questions or concerns about their child's milestones. If you want to learn more, this initiative is called Learn the Signs, Act Early. You can, like I said, go to cdc.gov/act early for this resource, or you can just scan that code that you see on your screen. So when you visit that website, you can gain access to a lot of different tools and resources that support developmental monitoring, which is, the process of just, keeping an eye on those milestones and making sure our kids are staying on track. and what you can say when you talk to an early intervention specialist or when you talk to your healthcare provider about your concerns. Next slide. So this is an infographic put together by our Child and Family Development Program here at DeKalb that I really wanted to be able to share, given that we have Kevin from Babies Can't Wait and Wanda from APS here. And it really shows the connection between developmental monitoring, developmental screening, and developmental evaluation. And so this is a way that families and providers can act early in your own capacity to best support your child's development. Because we know those first 5 years are super critical when it comes to child development. Developmental monitoring is a way for families of children or their caregivers to be sure that development is on track and get help if you think that it might not be. And monitoring is just something everyone can do, and it does not require training. So that's that first column right there. Next is developmental screening, which is a little bit different. Sometimes people might use those terms interchangeably, but developmental screening is what a lot of early childhood teachers or other healthcare providers use to monitor developmental milestones using tools like the ages and stages. I think Kevin mentioned that in his presentation. This is a really concrete way of sharing developmental information with families, but also helps to determine if a child could benefit from developmental evaluation. So a lot of the work that we do within inclusion and behavior support and with the Child and Family Development Program here at DeKalb is work with programs and encourage them to use developmental monitoring, use developmental screening to have those conversations with families about tracking milestones and tracking development while they're in early childhood. Lastly, we have developmental evaluation, which is done by a trained provider or a developmental pediatrician. And so this actually diagnoses developmental delays and concerns to identify what specific supports or interventions a child might need. And so this is what's done by agencies like Babies Can't Wait or with the local school systems, preschool special education programs. So that kind of helps give you guys some context about what that looks like. What if you're a child care provider and you're working directly with children, or if you're family, how can you take part in making sure that your child's development is staying on track, and what you can do to advocate for your child's development and reach out for supports and services. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of different resources around social emotional development. Families reach out to us all the time about, challenging behaviors or concerns that they might be seeing with their children. And so this is an example of a tip sheet that we have available. There's two different types that we have. We have all kinds of seeds for story time, just ways to build up your child's social emotional skills in the home or within the early learning environment. And so the Making Life Easier and the Backpack Connection series, both of these two handouts contain helpful ideas for families to try at home. So is it really hard to transition your kiddo from, home to school in the morning or it's really hard to get them down to sleep at night? And so these cover typical challenges that just arise in parenting, like routines and running errands when you have little ones, or even tantrums or biting. And so they're all accessible if you reach out to our SEEDS helpline, or if you go to the webpage on DeKalb's webpage, it's instructional support/SEEDS. You can take a picture of that QR code that's on the right and just look at the drop down that says Tools for Families. And we have several different handouts there, resources that are really easy to read, easy to use, printable, and free for everyone. All right, next slide. So, one last thing I want to come down and talk about is what resources or information we have available for families on our webpage also. We have a really great pre-recorded webinar series called Chat About Children. It's for families, and it just talks about different things across development, around social emotional development, around developmental monitoring that are really great. They're about 15 to 20 minutes max. So if you have a moment when you're having your coffee or if you have a break, you can take a look at one of them. So they cover developmental monitoring with Learn the Signs, Act Early, daily routines, and just supporting security and predictability through routines, creating connections and building your child's brain, how to keep your child engaged, building literacy and language development with your child, and then using choice to really support children's independence in a developmentally appropriate way. And so the link at the bottom or the QR code will take you directly to that web page with decal that has all of these videos. And if you're a family child care provider or if you're a child care teacher or administrator, these are great to share with the families that you work with also. Okay, so next slide, please. If you guys have any questions, like I said, you can always reach out to the SEEDS helpline. That's our single point of entry contact for DECAL's Inclusion and Behavior Support Program. The number is on your screen. It's 1-833-354-HELP or 4357. Or you can always email us at inclusion@decal.ga.gov if you have questions, if you want us to get in touch with your child's child care program, or if you're just looking for inclusive child care, we're happy to help in any way.
Veronica, thank you for the resources and the opportunity for us to learn what is available both for parents and for providers. And there has been this theme throughout today's discussion of you as parents, as caregivers, know your child best. And this is your opportunity to know what's available to you, but also to those that support you in your network, including your child care provider, and what resources exist within Georgia. So I want to jump into, because we have some parents and some providers and caregivers who've asked some questions in advance, some scenario questions. So I'd love to jump into those questions right now and just we have so many and such interest and such chatter happening in the chat and the Q&A that I'm going to ask you all to keep your sort of responses to the scenarios to about 2 minutes so we can get through a lot of the great questions that have come up from our audience members today and in advance of today's session. So the first question, my doctor referred my 2-year-old for a speech evaluation at a private therapy center, but they have a long waiting list. What should I do?
Okay, well, 2-year-olds are me. So I would say the best recommendation that I could give you is to contact Help Me Grow, which is 1-888-457-4769. That is a point of entry for all child health programs across the state of Georgia. They have people that are answering the phone calls that will direct you to the right program and get you connected to Babies Can't Wait, who would provide an evaluation in your home.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Next question. What do I do if my child care provider tells me I can't bring my child back to school because of their difficult behavior?
Yeah, that's a question that we get on the SEEDS helpline quite frequently. Families who are experiencing suspension, that's what that's called, or expulsion from their child care program should definitely reach out to the SEEDS helpline as early as possible for assistance. If your child's teacher or their program director is expressing concerns around their behavior, it's best, and we always love for families to be able to reach out to us so that we can contact them for coaching support around addressing those behaviors before they're sent home or removed. And programs can reach out too. But sometimes, that's already happened where the child has been expelled or sent home permanently. And so we can do a few different things. So, based on how the family is feeling, we can reach out to the same program and offer support to that classroom to see if they would be willing for the child to return, while we work to put a plan in place for classroom strategies or individual strategies for the child. Or 2, we could help the family identify another child care program and proactively offer them coaching or training or behavior support once the child has transitioned to the new school. Like I said in the slideshow, our behavior support process is designed to really bring the child's family and teacher together to collaboratively just identify strategies to address the challenging behaviors that might be exhibited at school or at home. And so it's really a team-based process that works best when all the members are at the table and they're all invested in that child being successful in that current classroom.
I love that, Veronica, both helping the parent who's experiencing it, but also that provider who, when that happens again, they're better prepared to support children and families through their own needs. So
Exactly.
Next question. What is a good way to redirect when students sit and constantly rock with their hands over their ears? I see you unmuting over there, Wanda, looking for your button.
I'm sorry, I listened to Veronica and Kevin with their responses, great responses. But thank you for the question, Ellen. That is me. And we often get contacted asking for some support, some strategies. And so when I think of a child putting their hands over their ears and just rocking back and forth, that's a sign of stimming, that they're stimming. And to be honest with you, that's a soothing for the child. So it's easy to walk over to the child and rub their back and assure them that it's going to be okay. But that's the behavior, but that behavior should not be looked at as a bad behavior because the child may be overstimulated. You can rub your hand on the child's back and reassure them that it's okay. And then maybe sensitive to the noise. And their noise seems to trigger sensitivity and overstimulation. So when they're rocking back and forth, again, that's a stimming that they pretty much use to soothe themselves. But ultimately, if the child's a child with that's been identified as a child with a disability, make sure you reach out to your local school district, the agency, and make sure that the child, if the child has not been evaluated, talk with the parent, consult with the parent, because you may have some characteristics, not saying the child is autistic, but there are some characteristics that's there that you're concerned about. But most ultimately, just make sure reassure the child it's okay. And this could be a behavior that actually soothing the child, becoming overstimulated because they're overstimulated. And then there are some instances where the child may benefit from having headphones on their ear because of the noise level. And that is another way that you can speak with parents regarding the rocking back and forth.
Right. Wanda, I love that reminder to really focus on what that child needs in that instance, but also remember that, to our earlier point, anyone can make a referral, parent, teacher, can make a referral to figure out what we could do to support that student long-term. So
absolutely,
thank you,
Anna. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, our next scenario is, my child is 18 months old and isn't walking yet. I stay home with them for now and I don't have a car. How can my child get help?
Well, not to repeat myself, but help me grow. That 1-888-457-4769 is that point of entry line to connect you to Babies Can't Wait. And again, as I mentioned in my presentation, the eligibility process through Babies Can't Wait, we come to you. So the evaluation and the services can occur in the home.
Thank you, Kevin. I will say, I do remember that when my own son went through early intervention, was as a working parent, as somebody outside of the home, I couldn't figure out what I was going to do. And they came to me, they came to my home, they came to the child care provider center to work with me and my student and the teacher. So I appreciate that flag and opportunity for families. There's a one-stop shop to go for the call center. So next question we have is, I am a child care provider. How soon should I share with a parent that I have concerns about their child's development? What is the best way to share observations without offending a parent who might not agree?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, as I shared a little bit earlier, it's really important that as child care providers that we're regularly discussing development with families, and not just when we have concerns. So that should be embedded within your early learning program. We want to make sure that we have a relationship that's built, a collaborative relationship with families, one where we share information on all the milestones. And so first, it's important to have, resources on monitoring development at home with families, and that CDC, those growth charts, the milestone trackers, they have apps and different booklets that are free to use and download for families or for providers. That's a great starting point to kind of base some of that conversation off of what you've observed and how you're tracking and monitoring their development. So it's a little bit more objective. And so when you're sharing those concerns, you just want to be sure that you balance, highlighting the child's strengths and come really well prepared with, your objective information on their developmental progress. And so whether that's using that milestones checklist or a developmental screener like ages and stages, you want to be sure that your observations are communicated in a way where they're non-judgmental, and because we really don't want to aim to make the family feel, defensive. Lastly, just encouraging families to share concerns with their pediatrician. As I said before, it's not our role as child care providers to suggest or to make a diagnosis. We just want to remind families of the importance of acting early on any possible concerns. And so when we do share information about, developmental monitoring or how the child is doing or any concerns, sometimes families do disagree. That happens. And, you can remind them that sometimes children behave differently at home than they do at school, and that you're just discussing what you have been able to observe. But also, families sometimes become upset if you're sharing concerns. And so, I really think it's best to try to acknowledge their feelings and express that, both that child care provider and that family want what's best for the child. And if they need time to think about it, you can suggest that they take some time and plan for another time to come up and discuss it again. But also just prompting them, if they don't agree or if they're upset about it, they should also really bring it up with the child's doctor, since they have that relationship with their pediatrician where they're seeing them regularly also.
Thank you, Veronica. It's a reminder to those on the call as well as parents that if a child care provider does bring this to you, this is your opportunity to recognize they're looking out for your child and to take it to your medical home or to your doctor to have that next step. So thank you for that, Veronica. Our last scenario, for families whose first language is not English, how can they access services if they need a translator for these opportunities?
Oh, thank you, Ellen. That's a question for me. So I have honestly had success stories for our ESOL families, which are those English as a second language. It's just that when they reach out and they're struggling, they don't know who to contact. So I really truly advise that they connect with their local school district. It's called ESOL department or someone in their school district to say, hey, they can pretty much interpret. Once they get into the school district, and we have a phenomenal ESOL department in Atlanta Public Schools, and they really support our early childhood programs. They will assist in getting the families connected to our office. And once we get those families connected, we provide them their intake packet in Spanish, parental rights are in Spanish. We, even when it's time to do evaluations, referral intake meetings, we have a translator at that meeting. So that is arranged by the LEA, which is the local education agency. Once we get those families connected, but the ultimate goal is connect with your LEA, which is your local education school system, your public schools in your community, in your county, and then they will be more than happy, be willing to support you to make sure you get those resources, because our ultimate goal is to get all children evaluated, regardless of what type of language that they have. We're here to support.
Thank you, Wanda. I'm sure that we could continue on this conversation all afternoon. And so we are going to move to a Q&A section, but I do want to remind folks that our Georgia Parent Power team at QCC really does need your feedback about this webinar as we plan for future opportunities. So you're going to see in the chat, which is being dropped in there right now, an opportunity for you to share your thoughts either now or at the end of our Q&A section. But I wanted to make sure you had access to that link to provide some feedback. We are now going to look at the questions that you have been posting in our Q&A and in our chat, because I've seen them flying up as we've been talking today. So I'm going to bring our very own Keon and Barry, who has been monitoring the Q&A for questions for our panelists. Keon, what questions do you have for our panelists today?
Hi, Ellen. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. And thank you to our esteemed guests who have sat on the panel today. We've received so many wonderful questions, but we only have time for a few. So our panelists, feel free to jump on the questions I'm getting ready to ask from the chat. The first question reads, at what age should a child be speaking or saying a couple words? I'm noticing a lot of children with delayed speech.
That's a loaded question. It really depends on how much language the child is exposed to within the home. Every child develops language at different times in their development. So I would refer back to a resource that Veronica mentioned, which is Learn the Signs, Act Early. It breaks down developmental milestones from birth to the age 5, and that at least will give the parent a guide of the typical age that a child starts speaking.
Kevin, thank you so much for that response. Wanda, did you want to hop in? I think I saw you come up.
No, I was just in my time.
No worries. Okay, we have another question from one of our audience members that reads, what resources can I access as a provider to help nonverbal students?
Well, I'll take that. So on our Georgia Seeds website, we have so many great visual supports and links for providers and for families to support, just strategies that they're using in their classrooms. Visual supports are a great way to communicate with all children, just because people are different. Some people are auditory learners, some people are visual learners. So prompting children when they see things and they hear things, it really helps their communication. And so if you visit the Seeds website, there's also the challengingbehavior.org. They also have a lot of great resources around visual supports. The Head Start Center for Visuals is another one where you can get free to download and print resources for you families to use and for providers to use to be able to support communication with children.
Veronica, that was such a great response. Thank you for providing all the insight that you did with that response. We have another question that reads, should we contact SEED simultaneously as we contact other departments mentioned in the webinar today, or should I only contact one? Anyone feel free to field that question.
Well, I'll start off. It depends on what that person is looking for. Specifically, if you know that you are looking for services or transition services, if your child is moving from, turning 3 soon, you can reach out to Help Me Grow, or you should already be working with your transition team to help get in touch with, the providers that will be supporting your child as they transition to preschool special ed. You can always contact SEEDS and we'll always, reach out to the appropriate agency and get you connected with who you need to talk with, whether it's Help Me Grow or whether it's the LEA. And so SEEDS is a great starting point, but also it's not the most direct starting point. So it's just based off of where that child or that family is in the process.
And I would also add, as far as Babies Can't Wait, Babies Can't Wait on their individualized family service plan, there is an option for outside services. So families do have an opportunity to receive services through Babies Can't Wait, where Babies Can't Wait will follow and monitor those services. But if there are additional services that the family are interested in receiving, they can definitely sign up for those services and it would not be an issue. The only thing that I will point out is that if a family is receiving public insurance, which is Medicaid, Medicaid only will reimburse providers for one case manager. So, and the case manager is that person that supports the family, that helps them facilitate the services and the program. So, and Babies Can't Wait, that case manager is a service coordinator.
And Kian, I'm sorry, Kevin, then I was going to make a statement.
No, go right ahead, Wanda.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt Kevin, but that's some great information from Kevin and Veronica. So I just want to remind the parents and the panelists, early childhood care providers, if a child has aged out or did not have the opportunity to participate in Babies Can't Wait, and you have a child that may have a suspected disability, please reach out to your local education agency. It's never too late. So just don't beat yourself up about it. It's never too late, because we take children as early as 3 years old to start the evaluation process. And a lot of families may think that, hey, my child is 4 years old, Georgia pre-K age, but please make sure you reach out to your local education agency if your child has a suspected disability, so we can get the child the services. It is not saying they cannot attend Georgia pre-K or a 3-year-old regular age childhood program. It's just that we want to be able to support that program in meeting your child's needs.
I really appreciate all three of you guys tag teaming on that question. And what we learn is there are so many resources that are available to our children. We have another question from the chat that reads, my 4-year-old was diagnosed with a speech delay and is currently in speech therapy. We see improvements through speech and he is in a pre-K program, but now that is not always, but he is not always participating on level with other children. Should we continue with pre-K or should we move to another form of therapy instead?
Keon, that may be a question for me. When I'm sending a child to receiving speech, I'm assuming it's a private services, speech and language private services. And if that's the case, there should be some conversation with the speech and language pathology. But however, there seems to be some concerns about the child not being able to be on level with the typical peers when it comes to cognition, motor, or whatever the deficits that may be happening at that time. So my recommendation would be work with your child care provider if the child is in a child care provider facility, initiate a referral, talk to the teacher and let the parents share with the teacher this is what they're observing. Or if the child care provider is observing the same thing, reach out to your LEA, your local education agency, and initiate the referral process. It's always safe, be better safe than sorry, because you can gather information. The child may not be eligible, but that's okay. But it's best to still reach out because there's some concerns because the child is 4 years old and there's a developmental milestone. And you want to make sure your child is not falling behind. If the child needs services, it's best to reach out to LEA and just take an opportunity to get your child evaluated. And remember, everything is free. Everything is free of charge.
Okay, I'll go to our next question. Are programs that are exempt from licensing eligible to receive decal support?
I'll take that one. Yes, so we have worked with a variety of different programs. We currently work with exempt programs also. We've provided training to them in the past and have provided coaching support. And so, we encourage those programs to also reach out to the CEIBS helpline if they're interested in coaching and training, so that we can talk through the individual specifics about your program and what we can do to support you.
Veronica, thank you so much. And guys, feel free to keep the questions coming. Another question reads, does the law prevent pre-K programs in public schools from denying access to services for children who are not yet potty trained, or even if they are not age eligible?
I was laughing, Keon, because I'm actually typing Valerie response while you was tagging the questions, and I know that they're coming in the chat box. So I was just trying to, not for sure if you was going to get to it. So that'd be a question for I can answer, assist you with Valerie. No child should be turned away, regardless whether they're potty trained or not. No, they should not be turned away, because one thing that we do, we work very closely. This I can speak for our district, but it should be happening across the state of Georgia. Work very closely with that pre-K program, with that school, to make sure the child receive a referral, consult with the parent, consult with the teacher, and just see if there's some concerns, because every child is not required to be potty trained once they start pre-K. That's not a requirement.
And I'll even, add on to that, Wanda, even for early childhood in any birth through 5 license program, they're not allowed to say licensing regulations are the ones that stop a child from being enrolled or participating in that child care program because they're not potty trained. We work with our child care services units and with child care programs to make sure that we can provide coaching support and that the licensing consultant can provide technical assistance to make sure that that child can be included regardless if they're potty trained or not.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your responses. And Wanda, yes, our team is on it, getting all those good questions in the chat, making sure that everyone feels heard here. Another question reads, are there disadvantages of letting children with delays learn with the general population in classrooms?
I tackle that one, Keon. Can you read that one again from Keon? I'm sorry.
Sure, I'm happy to. The question reads, are there disadvantages of letting children with delays learn with the general population classrooms?
No, there's no disadvantages. One thing about it, you have to think about that child that may have suspected disability if they haven't been identified. Because one thing that we keep in mind, all children, because sometimes children behaviors can interrupt their learning as well as the learning of others. But however, whatever delays that are present, that child and that classroom teacher that makes sure we address those behaviors that are impeding the learning of that child, but keeping in mind that we have other children in the classroom that we don't want to, that do want to interrupt their learning experience as well. So there's no disadvantages, but however, there is an advantage because you want to recognize, hey, you know, LaJohnny may be having some issues and we want to make sure we address it. First, you try to work with your teacher, and we do reach out to offices like Veronica for challenging behaviors. And then we do provide our teachers some coaching before we make that quick referral. Because again, you have to keep in mind, children may not have prior experience of being in school. So you do want to try to work with that classroom teacher before you quickly make a referral. If that doesn't work, then you consider making a referral to address the social emotional piece, behavior piece.
And can I add on to that too? Thanks so much, Wanda. I just wanted
Absolutely.
to add a couple of things too. You know, we get this question a lot in training when we're working with childcare providers. And, you know, there are so many benefits to having an inclusive learning environment where not only are children who have disabilities are learning from their typically developing peers, which help them build up to achieving some of those skills that we expect for those age ranges, but also what typically developing peers learn from children who have disabilities and getting exposure to diversity. Because just like when you grow up and you're, you know, out in the community, not everyone is the same, right? Everyone has differences. Everyone has a variety of skill sets, behaviors. And so there's so much benefit to children who have disabilities and children who are typically developing, learning, growing, playing, thriving together in the same environment. That's truly what inclusion is. And so we want to promote that as much as possible. And if you're a childcare provider and you can provide that for the children in your learning environment, that's a wonderful thing. It's amazing.
Thank you guys so much for your responses. We have time for just a few more questions. The next question reads, if my child is in pre-K at a private pre-K program, can they be provided services at their current location?
That may be a question for me, Kian. We do get private pre-K programs, private preschools. And in one of my slides, I was saying to make sure that the private school doesn't meet the definition of elementary. It's the elementary, because if a private school, preschool have a program, kindergarten or higher in that building, and just like, for instance, if that child lives in Atlanta but attend a private preschool in DeKalb County and has kindergarten or higher in that building, then it's the DeKalb County responsibility to provide those services. Or that child, just say for instance, vice versa, the child is from DeKalb County and attend a private pre-K, a private school in Atlanta, and has kindergarten in that building, then Atlanta is responsible for providing those services. So it all depends on if that private preschool, a private pre-K meets the definition of elementary school. It has to have a kindergarten program in their building. And if so, wherever that program is located, is their LEA responsibility to provide those services.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna read this next question from the audience that reads, what programs are there to support parents of children with autism?
I can definitely suggest there's the Marcus Center. They have a lot of programs. They specialize in children who are diagnosed, and they make diagnoses for children with autism. And they have a lot of parent-directed programs, as well as workshops, as well as tools and resources catered around what if, I think, maybe, I don't know type situations. They have a lot of programs associated with Marcus. So I would definitely recommend the Marcus Center.
And to piggyback on what Kevin, in addition to what Kevin has shared, and if the parents, again, the LEA should have special needs programs if the child has been identified, in addition to that Kevin shared with the Marcus, because we, as one school district that works very closely with Marcus. Actually, we have several grants that we partner to make sure that we provide those services to our school, to our children that's been diagnosed with autism. And then a good website to go to, a good webpage to go to is Autism Speaks. That's a great resource. Autism Speaks is a great resource for parents to reach out, in addition to, like Kevin stated, about markers. But most definitely in your LEA, if your child has been identified, has not been identified, to receive those services through your school district that support children with autism, regardless of what their disability may be. It could be significant development delay, it could be autism, or they have medical fragile or physical fragile children. Most definitely your school district should be able to support those children.
Thank you guys for your responses. And we have time for just one more question. The last and final question reads, how can a child care provider get help with providing or obtaining specialized wheelchairs or modifying the center to better help a child with physical disabilities? I can read the question just one more time. How can a child care provider get help with providing or obtaining specialized wheelchairs or modifying the center to better help a child with physical disabilities? Anyone feel free to take that last question.
I'll chime in.
Okay.
I'll chime in first here. I would encourage that program, if they're thinking about making modifications within the center, to reach out to the SEEDS helpline. That's one thing that our specialists work hand in hand with child care providers, administrators, to look at your learning environment, look at your program, and consider what modifications you can make to make it more inclusive or to help children better participate in that center's learning environment. Different modifications that are ramps, wheelchairs, helping them to get in touch with the child service providers to see, whether it's insurance, whether it's different agencies that help provide resources around that. I know Lecotech of Georgia is one agency that does provide different materials, equipment. So we have a lot of these different resources on our DECAL webpage. If you go to the SEEDS website, where there's different specific resources, depending on if it's a physical disability, if you're looking for assistive technology, or just general modifications for visual supports. So those are all available on our webpage, but I would definitely reach out to the SEEDS help line if you want some one-on-one support in looking at your learning program and thinking about how can I make these modifications happen.
I want to thank our audience so much for their participation, for joining, and for their questions. I'm going to hand it back over to Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Keon. This really is about equipping our parents in today's call to understand what's available to them and how to access those services, because it does start with you. It starts with you at home, and it starts with you in helping to really access what's available to you. I know in the chat, just saw one of our parents mention that they had a son who had received early intervention services for hearing loss and is graduated and now looking to get his doctorate degree. And it really is about the support that you as a parent need to support your children on their journey with their gifts as part of the way that we can support you. And so I just want to remind you today that we are again going to paste the survey into the chat so that we can get your feedback to provide more opportunities to learn more about what you want to hear about for your children and for your community. We'll also, if you don't catch it, don't worry, we'll make sure to send it to you via email at the end of today's session. I want to go ahead and thank our panelists today. This has been an incredible conversation. I know that it will be watched and watched again once we post it on our different channels. So thank you for giving us your time and your resources today. And I certainly know you'll be getting some emails from parents on this call. I can already see the chatter. I want to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Carter's, today. We appreciate their commitment to making sure that we can provide the resources that families need and the educational opportunities they need for their children and communities throughout Georgia. As a reminder, earlier in the call, I talked about our 877 All GA Kids number. If you are looking for high quality childcare, If you got to the end of today's call and are just looking for where to go, I saw one parent list that they were looking for a provider and we're not able to find one, please call 1-877-ALL-GA-KIDS, and one of our referral specialists will work with you to find childcare within your community. If you'd like to get periodic texts or news and information related to young children, sign up for our Georgia Parent Power text service. You just go ahead and text CARE, C-A-R-E, to 877-255-4254. Again, that number is up on the screen. QCC is a nonprofit organization. We do these opportunities because of sponsorships and donations from many of those on this call and throughout the state. If you'd like to contribute to help us continue to provide great programs like this webinar, and many other programs that we provide throughout the state to families and to providers, please check out our website at qccdonate.org. Your contribution is greatly appreciated. Again, we thank you for your time. We'll see you again at our next Georgia Parent Power webinar. Stay connected to QCC on your favorite social media platform. Follow us at QCC Georgia.